right, you ready, Kenny?
And here we go, Gary.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Gary and Kenny Show. I'm Gary Kroger in Waterloo, Iowa, and I'm joined by
Ken Seisler in Calabasas, California.
How are you, Ken?
I'm well. Enough about me. Let's meet Hawk.
And okay, very well. Let's get right into our guest. Our guest today is American film producer Hawk Koch. Hawk is the former president of both the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences and the Producers Guild of America. He was involved in over 60 major films. I mean, I'll name a few: Chinatown, The Way We Were, Wayne's World, Rosemary's Baby. He's collaborated with Francis Ford Coppola, Roman Polanski, Sidney Pollack, Warren Beatty, Robert Redford. It goes on. He's also the author of Magic Time, My Life in Hollywood, which chronicles his
show book,
which chronicles his fascinating life growing up in Hollywood, his father's legacy, his own career, and his journey of self-discovery. And that's what really captivated me. Please welcome Hawk Koch.
It is a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you, Ken and Gary. I'm excited to do this.
No. We're still trying to figure out how someone of your caliber is doing a little diddly squit podcast like ours. How did we land you, Hawk?
There's a diddly squit producer named Mark Gordon.
Yeah. It's all connections, Gary.
We love that diddly squit.
The whole business is connections.
Who's a buddy of mine.
Yeah.
And he said, you've got to do this. So if Mark says do it, I do it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Hey, Hawk, so we're coming up because there's so much stuff that I want to talk to you about. But right now, we're a little bit out from the Academy Awards. You are with the Academy Awards is the Motion Picture Association of America, which you were the president of. You still belong to the association, I assume.
Yes.
Now, first question, are you going to the Academy Awards that's coming up in a week from now?
You bet.
You will. Have you been to every single one?
No, because it started in 1920.
Okay, let me rephrase the question.
I missed that one.
Good catch.
Good catch. Okay.
Humor is important, guys.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, somebody who has not been going to the Academy Awards is Mark Gordon.
Yes.
And you and I know both why, because he lost to that little movie.
He lost Saving Private Ryan.
He did not take it well. He lost.
He didn't take it well.
He still hasn't.
But still hasn't.
To re-ask Kenny's question, since you were president, have you gone to every Academy Award? You put on the tuxedo, you and Molly?
Yeah, I didn't go last year. That was, very small and in the middle of COVID. But other than that, I've been going on and off since 1971.
Well, here's the thing. I think a lot of people understand, I'm in the Directors Guild, Gary's in SAG, people understand those organizations. But when they hear the Academy, it's kind of obtuse. Like, who is in the Academy?
Okay, very simple. All of these other award shows, I don't know, critics, 12 people in a room, decide on people's choice, who knows, somebody in Australia is voting for, best American film. I don't know. The Academy is nothing but peers of the people who make the movies. We have 17 different branches: production design, actors, producers, directors, sound, vis effects, writers. Did I say directors?
Right.
Executives, movie executives,
and each one of those branches just
documentaries.
Each one of those branches only votes on the category of the winner.
No,
oh.
Each one of those branches nominates who is nominated for their award. So only cinematographers nominate cinematographers. Only sound technicians nominate best sound.
Then who chooses the winner?
Everybody.
9,000 get to vote on all 23 awards.
Okay. How do you get to be a member of the Academy?
Good question.
You have to be, each branch gets to select who their members every year, what members should be brought in. Once you're a member for life. So you don't all of a sudden fall out of favor unless you don't pay your dues. You have to be invited by your branch. So if I'm a producer, I might want to invite some new producer or some producer who's been doing great work but isn't in the Academy again. So me and one other sponsor from the producers branch will write to the producers branch executive committee and say, we'd like to invite Gary Kroger to be a member because he's been an amazing producer and we want him in. Then those 10, 20, 40 are looked at by a branch subcommittee, a committee of maybe, I don't know, 15 other producers. And they decide who of that 10, 20, 30, or 40 should get in this
It's
year.
a big deal to get into the Academy.
Yes.
I think we should elect presidents that way.
Did you vote this year on the best pictures and all?
Yes, I
categories?
voted for
You
Best
voted.
Picture. That's all I'm allowed to nominate for.
I see.
And starting Thursday, for a week, we are all able to vote electronically, of which I'm very proud.
Yeah.
Electronic voting started when I was president.
Mhm.
I got a lot of flack. Oh, no, paper ballots. And I said, no, we're in the 21st century.
Right. Well, I want to talk
So
about
now-
that too.
That I will be voting starting Thursday. I will.
Have you picked your best picture yet? Do you know in
Yes.
your head your best picture? You're probably not allowed to say, right?
Not allowed to say.
Well, no.
What year were you president of the MPA?
2000 of the Motion Picture Academy.
Yeah.
2012, 2013.
Who was
Argo
the-
was the winner.
Who was the host of that show?
Seth MacFarlane.
Oh, and now did they say he did a good job? Were they
Yes.
okay with Seth? That was good.
Yes.
So now, since then, we've had all this interest about the Kevin Hart thing, and trying to get then the no host thing, then the 2 women thing. Now it's the 3 women thing. It's like I don't know how you win in this world today. I long for the Johnny Carson, the Bob Hope, those people.
Billy Crystal, for that
Billy
matter.
Crystal. That's what I long
Steve
for.
Martin.
I liked Whoopi. I liked Ellen DeGeneres.
Yeah, yeah,
Ellen was phenomenal.
absolutely, absolutely.
I think that. I think, like most things, you try to build places and things and people up, and then human nature, you want to tear them down.
Yeah.
And I think that, unfortunately, because any obit of anybody who's ever been nominated or won an Oscar, the first line of Joe Dokes, Oscar nominee for so-and-so, passed away this morning. The Oscar is the gold standard.
Mm-hmm.
And we try, and we're trying to stay relevant. It's very hard to stay relevant today.
Really?
With
Today.
everything else that's going on.
It's unbelievable.
And so it's
Different world.
you know,
Different world.
everybody, when somebody's nominated, the first thing on all of these websites are, here are the nominees and here are the snubs.
Yes.
Well, they can't wait to talk about
Yes.
who didn't get
Well,
nominated.
they also do a checklist of how many blacks, how many women, how many Latinos. There's all that right alongside that, the
That's-
snubs and the
that's it.
diversity quotient.
And that's, and it probably is because we didn't, here's 3 white guys talking.
Yeah,
It is, but I think a lot, to be honest with you, is the internet. It's just clickbait. They put if you make any kind of controversy, they do clickbait.
Case in point, the passing of William Hurt. And I posted, a great actor passed away. It's very sad. He'll be missed. Well, of course, immediately the cyber world descended
Mhm.
upon me. Well, what about what Marlee Matlin's accusations in her book? And I went, oh my God, I forgot. Are we allowed to celebrate a great actor who passed away, who probably had a life-changing experience and became a better person, but because of the Marlee Matlin situation, there's an industry of like, well, you don't dare.
Well, don't get me started because I made 2 films with one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, Roman Polanski.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
So
you did.
We're going the same.
Before we get into your movie career, which is absolutely going to be
Yeah.
after this last
Well-
question, and it's probably, I don't know, it's just an industry question. I'm in the DGA. When initially to be able to get access to the movies, you went to the movie theater to watch the movie. They said you could go to the movies for free, which most of us could afford anyhow, but it was great. We go to the free incentive, and I'd watch a movie on the movie theater. Now I get screeners and I get DVDs. I didn't see one movie that is nominated in a movie theater. What's happening with, how do you guys do that? Because it's a different experience, isn't it?
Yes, total different experience. And we have to go before COVID, BC, because COVID changed everything to the detriment, in my opinion.
Totally.
And I remember, I guess it's 3 years ago now, where I saw Roma. Roma? Yes.
Yeah.
I went to the movie theater to see Roma. And I came out and thought, wow, this is a really good movie. Then a few friends of mine saw it on DVDs at home and said, oh, I turned it off after 20 minutes. Couldn't stand it. I ran it at home again to watch it a second time, and it didn't play anywhere near as well as it did. So I'm hopeful, that people will go back to the movies, and they are going back.
In your book, you talk about your first magnificent experience in a giant theater in the dark. It's the 10 Commandments. And you talked about, you made it so tactile that I was there, because my first experience was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea in a big cinema scope. And my dad,
James Mason.
Welcome to the Nautilus. We'll be diving to depths of 20. I've done it ever since. And to this day, Hawk, and you'll relate to this, I can't watch a movie without popcorn. I have to have the experience with other people and the magnificence.
All openness, I'm on the board of AMC Theaters. We're the #1 theater company in the world. And we are about to put out AMC popcorn in your local supermarket. So,
but that'll keep me at home. I like to go to the theater.
Yeah, but
I want you to go to the theater, but when you're home and you're watching Succession, a TV series.
But you guys are old enough to also remember that we used to make popcorn by, you get the little pot, you put some oil in the bottom of the pot, you put the popcorn in there, you put the top on. That was pop, and it smelled up the house.
That was popcorn.
Now it's microwave popcorn. It's just not the same.
Wait a minute. You're talking about that. I was in Iowa, and Cary Grant was coming down, and I had to go and pick the corn because that plane was coming to get him.
Wait,
you brought up Cary Grant. I want to bring up something else that goes back to your book. And again, we'll talk about films and the people you've worked with. But I was so captivated by how warm and real your book was. You write in your conversational voice. And you talked about being 4 years old, going to your dad's set in Colorado.
4 or 5, was he?
Yeah.
Was it Colorado or Utah?
Durango, Colorado.
Oh, okay.
Colorado. And you got to the set, and this cowboy comes up to you and says, kid, you want to get on a horse? And you got on a horse, and that was
Clark Gable.
Clark Gable.
I didn't know it was Clark Gable. It was some guy on a horse. When I got home that night, my father said to my mother, guess who gave him his first horseback ride? And my mother said, who? And my father said, Clark Gable. I still, at 4 years old, didn't know who the hell Clark Gable was. I certainly knew who he was later.
Hawk, your book is a holy shit book. Every page.
It's a holy shit book.
Holy shit. He wasn't there. No, holy shit. I can't believe that. He did that with Warren Beatty? No fucking way. Robert Redford? Holy shit. I mean, there's nobody that can top any of your stories. Are you at parties and like somebody tells like a story and you go, oh yeah? Well, I'll only tell you about the time I was with Robert Redford. You top them all, don't you?
That would have been a good title, by the way. Holy shit, My Life in Pictures.
Well, I love the idea of Magic Time because it really was and still is a magical time for me.
Well,
yesterday at the memorial.
Can we go back? I want to talk about B and Billy Koch.
Yeah.
I want you to tell the story of how B and Billy, who had no connection to the movie business, through destiny or fate or whatever, ended up working in a studio, and that's how the Koch family became movie makers.
My grandfather, in the 1920s, bookmaking was legal, like it still is in England and Ireland. And he was the bookmaker for Saratoga Racetrack up in upstate New York. And that's where my father grew up around racehorses. And in the early 1930s, New York State started something called pari-mutuel machines. So instead of bookmakers making the money on the losses, the state got the money. And my grandfather was still a bookmaker. That's what he did for a living.
Mhm.
And he had a lot of connections and he had a weak ticker. So he decided to come out to California. That's where his doctor's, sunny California. And Santa Anita opened up in 1934. And also there was a racetrack called Caliente down in Tijuana, Mexico. And he, knowing a lot of people, started to make a lot of contacts as a bookmaker. And among his contacts were Louis B. Mayer and Daryl Zanuck, Harry Cohn, all the heads of the studios, and everybody down from the heads of the studios, as well as he had friends like Bugsy Siegel.
Mm.
And
Who he
that
had
was
dinner with
not-
the night before Bugsy was murdered, right?
Yes, he did have dinner with Bugsy the night before he was murdered. My grandfather, while not a mafioso or a hood, he was I guess it was illegal. And by the way, there are still bookmakers everywhere,
Mhm.
in case somebody out there doesn't know that. But when my grandfather died when I was like 2 or 3 years old, so I didn't really get to know him. His name was Billy Koch, and I named my first son Billy. And my son Billy channels his great grandfather. My son Billy is in the racehorse business.
Get the hell
Not a
out of here.
bookmaker. He's
Isn't
in
I was
the
going to say,
something?
he's a bookie.
Wow.
no. He actually has racehorses and he does very well. So anyway,
But didn't since they moved your grandfather onto the studio lot? Which studio lot was that?
yes, Fox.
Okay.
Because Daryl Zanuck was a friend of his, and the police got a little knowledge of him when his office was up on Sunset Boulevard. They moved him into Fox, and he had an office there. So when
That's how the Koch family got into the movie business.
my father needed a job, and my grandfather said to Daryl Zanuck, "Hey, can you give my kid a job? I don't know if he's any good, but he's 19 years old." So that my father got a job in the stock film library.
Just because we're back in this time, and I know we're going off on it, but I just want to go back to one other controversy. So the MPAA just recently opened the Motion Picture Museum.
The AMPAS. MPAA is the Motion Picture
Oh,
Association.
right. I'm sorry.
of America.
AMPAS opened the museum.
Yes.
Right. And all the names that you mentioned as far as head of studio all had one thing in common. They were Jewish.
Yes.
And one of the things that has been discussed is the lack of representation at the museum.
Yes. And believe me, I have a very loud voice. Nicholson used to call me Bullhorn because I didn't need it.
That's Jack Nicholson for those.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And believe me, within the next 6 months, there will be a permanent, very good area to discuss how the movie business got started and all the Jews that started it.
Your father, I'm talking to the people that watch our show between Omaha and Cleveland. Your father, Howard W. Koch, I mean, quite a legend unto himself. And you're growing up in a way, and you talk about your own coming of self-awareness in his shadow.
Yeah.
He then gave you your first job in the business. And you struggled a little bit, didn't you, with the nepotism or the insinuation that others may have thought?
Oh, yeah. There's one story. I was working on a movie called This Property is Condemned, starring Natalie Wood and a young actor in his second film, Robert Redford.
The names you can mention. It just blows my mind.
I was 19 and I was working my ass off, if I can say that on this program.
Yes, anything
And,
you can say on this program.
I was in the bathroom and I was in a stall and two guys came in from the crew and one said to the other, you know, the reason why that kid Koch got the job is because his dad's head of Paramount. And my heart sank because I thought, you know, I'm nothing. It's all about my dad. And the other guy said, yeah, it's probably true. That's how he got the job. But the kid is working his ass off and he's doing a good job. So why don't you give him a break? And I thought at that moment that I had to work harder than anybody else because I wanted to prove that it was me. It was not my father, and that they had to look at me. And it wasn't for 31 years later that I finally figured out how to change my name. and
Yeah,
get out from underneath that shadow.
and didn't his first job wasn't in the film business.
No, my first job, I was going to UCLA, and John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and I happened to have been a big Kennedy supporter. And when he was assassinated, I didn't know where to turn. I went into my room, closed the door, closed the blinds, and for 3 days just had the television on, watched Lee Harvey Oswald get murdered, and really came out saying, I don't want to go back to college. And I didn't know, I was really lost. And my parents were having a dinner party, and there was a Brit there. And I started talking to him, and he told me that he managed American rock groups who came over to England. And I loved music. I loved dancing. I knew every lyric to every song. And I said, gee, do you think there's any chance that I could get a job with you? And he said, well, yeah. He said, you want to work in my mailroom? If you show up in London, I'll give you a job. So I showed up in London. I got 12 pounds a week, which was about $20 a week, 1964. And after about 3 weeks, he said to me, you're very organized. That's always my nickname in high school was Coach Koch, because I was always organizing everything. I still am. And he said, I think you could pick up, the music, the American rock stars coming over, pick them up at Heathrow Airport, get them to their hotel, get them to the TV show or the concert or whatever they're going to do, take care of them. And he said, you think you can do that? Because I think you can. I said, yeah. So the first person I picked up was Leslie Gore. It's my party, and I'll cry if I want to. And her young music producer, Quincy Jones.
Wow.
And I've been friends with Quincy since 1964.
Wow.
The next group was the Ronettes. We just lost Ronnie Spector, who just died.
Yeah.
Be My Baby, one of the great songs of all time.
Spector produced too, weren't they?
Yeah.
Phil Spector, yeah. And well, she was Ronnie Bennett at that time. She hadn't married Phil Spector yet, but Phil had produced that song and many others of theirs. I worked with George Wein Newport Jazz Festival, Coleman Hawkins, Philly Joe Jones for you jazz.
Well,
and the Dave Clark Five.
Right, Dave Clark Five.
Then I evidently did a good job. And he said, listen, I own the Dave Clark Five. Dave and I, the other four boys were on salary. They were going to do a huge US-Canada tour. The Beatles had just come back. And actually, the Dave Clark Five had sold more albums, more records, I should say, than the Beatles in the summer of '64. And they were huge. And so he said, will you go on and be on the tour with them and do a lot of the same kind of stuff you were doing? Sure, I loved it. We did 48 cities in 52 days, everywhere. Elkhart, Indiana.
I'll bet that made you glad all over.
Oh, it was you.
Thank you, everybody.
At the end of it, I was in bits and pieces.
Oh, he's
you win.
He topped you again.
You win.
Hey, but I do want to mention this. Your father was head of Frank Sinatra's production company.
Yeah, in the early 60s.
And you went, I think, over to Italy, right? To when they were doing Von Ryan's Express.
Yes.
And you got to know Frank a little bit, huh?
Well, yes. As much as I got to know him a little bit then and a little more when I was doing Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, right.
Because he was married to Mia.
Yes.
And Mia and I were about the same age. And so we hung out a lot together. And
I love the story that you tell in the book about your father's relationship with Frank, because Frank has a history of making the people who work for him close friends, familia, right? And your dad said this is a business relationship. And your comment was,
yeah,
it's probably why the relationship survived.
That's why it survived. And when my father was asked to be head of Paramount, he was really worried that he was going to go to Frank and ask Frank, hey, I know I'm running your company. We just did a great movie, The Manchurian Candidate. And Paramount wants me to go. And we were all nervous. What's Frank going to say? And he said, just shows you I know what the hell I'm doing. You go to Paramount and make great movies.
Huh. So it
The problem
validated.
was he made a few movies with Frank that weren't very good. And he got in a big fight with Frank because Frank wanted to have the Jack Lemmon role in The Odd Couple, which
That
my
is
dad
such so
produced.
interesting.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Boy, that would have been a different movie.
Yeah.
All right. Now, I want to ask that question
Okay, go ahead.
because I know people are going, my
You know
wife
people.
is back
You
here
know
going,
people.
you keep calling him Hawk. Hawk.
Mhm.
You're a legend in the business, but between Omaha and Cleveland, Hawk, you've got to explain Hawk and how it differentiated you from your father.
All right. Well, so as a child and growing up and even into my 40s, to my mother, I was a little Howie because I was junior. I was Howard Koch Jr., Howard W. Koch Jr., and I'll tell that story later if you want. And no matter where I went, no matter who I met, and even yesterday at the memorial, some people still, I can't call you, your dad was. My dad, no matter who I talked to, would say, your dad was the most wonderful man I ever met. Do you know what he did for me? Do you know what he did for my sister, for my wife, for my cousin? Oh my God, you must be so proud to be his son. Please tell him hello for me and thank him. They didn't say, and what do you do?
Right.
Yeah, right.
They didn't even ask who I was. I was just a, whatever that's called, a link to my father. And I started, I did pretty well. I was a top assistant director in the business. Then I became a pretty good producer. I ran a major production company, 2 major production companies. And still, I would go to the Academy Awards rehearsals where my dad produced a bunch of the rehearsals in the shows in the 70s and 80s, including the 50th, which was a big deal. And I'd be there sitting around and they'd introduce me as Howard Koch Jr. and they'd talk about what a wonderful dad your father is over there. Right. And they'd say, what do you do? They didn't, they didn't even know I was in the business.
Right.
So I'd been through several relationships. I had 3 kids, a couple of divorces, and a relationship had broken up. And I was sitting with a good Catholic friend of mine. And I said, for my 50th birthday, I got to do something. And I don't know what I can do, but it can't be about finding another relationship. And he said, well, I've been to your children's bar and bat mitzvahs. And I know your parents were non-religious and you're non-religious. Can you get bar mitzvahed at 50? Because at your kids' bar and bat mitzvahs, I always saw how emotional you were. And I thought, gee, Gary, that's a great idea. Not this Gary.
Yeah.
And I looked around and found a rabbi who was a spiritual guy, didn't have some big Beverly Hills congregation, had a little shack in an area in Los Angeles called the Miracle Mile. And I went in to meet with him and we sat for about a half hour. He was an older man. He was on crutches. He had had polio as a kid. And after about a half hour of me telling him my story, he said, well, who are you? Oh, I'm a movie producer. No. Who are you? Oh, I'm a father and I'm a son. Who are you? I didn't know who I was. And I don't know where it came from in me, but I went, oh, I'm a Jewish man. And he said, that's a start. He said, what's your Hebrew name? Now, all Jews are supposed to have a Christian name and a Hebrew name.
I'm Shmuel.
Okay, not me.
I didn't know that.
Not me. And I said, I don't have a Hebrew name. Because I went and asked him, can you get bar mitzvah at 50? I didn't even know if you could get bar mitzvah at 50. He said, yes, of course you can get bar mitzvah at any time. I have a friend who just got bar mitzvah at the Wailing Wall at 80 years old. So he said, what's your Hebrew name? I said, I don't have one. He said, well, for your 50th birthday, for your bar mitzvah, you will be given your own name. I broke down. He meant Hebrew name. But when he said, you'll be given your own name, when I broke down, he said to me, what's wrong? And I said, I just realized for 50 years I've had my father's name. I want my own name. And he said, you can have it. What? A rabbi told me I could have my own name. And do you want to be called Ken, or do you want to be called Gary? Do you want to be Frank? No. Well, did you ever have a nickname? And I said, well, my initials are HWK. And a few people called me Hawk in like grammar school, but it never stuck. And he said, well, do you know anything about hawks? And I said, yeah, bird of prey. That's all I knew. He said, well, hawks mate for life. And I, as I said, I'd been through many relationships. I wasn't very good at that. And they can see from horizon to horizon, and they can see like a squirrel a half a mile away. Wouldn't it be great if you could see the panoramic of your life and the detail always at the same time? And I thought, wow, but isn't Hawk a pretentious name? And he said, it's only pretentious if you allow it to be. And I thought, oh my God, could I at 50 years old, I'm producing movies. Everybody in Hollywood knows me. I've got ex-wives. I've got 3 children. Could I literally change my name? And I went away to Telluride, Colorado. And I was walking down the street, and there was a Native American selling little trinkets. And there was a little trinket, little faux silver thing, little rectangle. And it had the word listen on it. And it had a cloud and a little lightning bolt. And I said to the Native American, what does this mean? And he said, do you know how awake and aware and attuned we are between the lightning and the thunder? How we listen to all of our senses, between the lightning and the thunder. We hear it, we see it, we taste it, we smell it, we feel it. Wouldn't it be great if you could be that awake and aware and attuned all the time in your life to all the different things that you need to be sensitive to? And I thought, wow, that's the A in Hawk, H-A-W-A, my initials and the A. And I came home and I got bar mitzvahed and got my name changed to Hawk. And for the last 26 years, I met my wife about a year later. We've been together 26 years. And I did mate for life. And I do think that I see, you don't change 100%, but I think I do see things a lot.
Hawk, that's
Bravo.
a magnificent, beautiful story.
And
But
it
I
is.
can't imagine when people just generally that you don't know, or you're in an airport or you're in an airplane, and someone says, how'd you get the name Hawk? You can't go through the whole story. You must have a short version where you just go, oh, I like birds.
I haven't used that one, but I will.
I want you to call me Crow from now on.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, a lot of people. I
Well,
met a girl
Kroger.
named Birdie.
And I eat, they eat carrion on the side of the road. But
Your first gig, I guess, Sidney Pollack movie, The Property is Condemned.
Yes.
And that was one you mentioned before with Redford and Natalie Wood.
Yeah, that was as an assistant director. Yes.
Yeah. And the thing about my point was going to be, assistant director is an incredibly difficult job. It really is. It's one of the
Best job
toughest
in the
jobs.
business. I loved it.
Right. You did, but you had a knack for it. People who want to become ADs, they go to AFI, they take special,
Well-
you have to take tests. You have to take a test.
And you have to be organized.
You have to be organized,
Well-
right? So anyhow, but he's a nuts and bolts movie producer. He can break down a script, and when I say break down a script, he could look at a script and tell you how many days shoot it's going to be, what he's going to cost, what the personnel is going to be, all of those things. Not many producers have that ability.
Well, not today. In the old days, they did.
Oh, is that right?
In the old days, a producer did everything. But today, given all of how hard it is to get a movie made and how much time is spent developing the material or packaging the material, that most of the newer producers have less knowledge and experience of doing all the things you just talked about.
Tell people what an AD. I'm going to ask him to tell the Cary Grant story. You were the dialogue coach for him. I want you to tell the Cary Grant story.
Okay, well, I worked for William Castle, who made a lot of B horror movies. But in the early days, Bill Castle, as a young man, worked for Orson Welles on War of the Worlds, the great radio show where everybody listening on radio thought, in fact, aliens were coming down to kill all of us. And And he really wanted to be in the movie business. And he said to Orson Welles, hey, I want to go to Hollywood. And can you help me get a job out there? And Orson Welles says, I'll set you up with a meeting with Harry Cohn. Harry Cohn was the founder and head man at Columbia Pictures. So Bill goes to California. Bill grew up in New York City. He didn't know how to drive, never drove a car. And he's in California. And he goes in front of Columbia Pictures the night before, walks around the studio and says, wow, I'm going to go meet Harry Cohn, the head of the studio. I'm 21 years old. And he goes into a bar across the street from Columbia Pictures. And in the bar, he's sitting at the bar about to have a drink, and there's a guy sitting down at the end of the bar. And because Bill is being, hey, can I buy you a drink? And the guy says, no, that's all right, thanks. He says, come on, let me buy you drinks. And that's all right. Bill has a drink, orders another drink, and sees the other guy's drink is empty. Come on, let me buy you a drink. He goes over to him. He says, tomorrow I'm going to meet with Harry Cohn, head of Columbia Pictures. I'm Bill Castle. And the guy goes, hi, I'm George Stevens. Well, George Stevens was one of the great directors of all time. Giant, you name it. I can't even think of all of it. The great movie with Elizabeth Taylor and Ed Montgomery Clift.
Giant?
A Place in the Sun.
A Place in the Sun.
Place in the Sun. Any rate, he says, oh, Mr. Stevens, I'm so sorry. I apologize. I didn't know it was you. And actually, I'm just out here from New York, and I'm going to meet Mr. Cohn tomorrow. He says, that's okay, Bill. I like your chutzpah. He says, when you see Harry, tell him you can work for me on my movie. And Bill says, well, what do you want me to do? And he said, you can be the dialogue director. In those days, it was called the dialogue director. And so Bill went and met with Harry Cohn the next day and said that he met George Stevens the night before, and George was about to do a movie with Cary Grant. And George was going to make him the dialogue director. Harry Cohn said, if George Stevens says you got a job, you got a job. So he's all excited, except he's afraid to ask what a dialogue director does. He assumes they direct the dialogue. So first day of shooting, first scene, I think it's Cary Grant, and George Stevens says action. And after the first line, Bill Castle says, cut. Cary, you read the line wrong. George Stevens turned to Bill Castle and went out at his neck and said, if you ever cut my camera again, you will be 6 feet under.
Yeah.
And luckily, Cary Grant said, wait a minute, George. Bill's right.
Wait a minute, George.
I did say the line wrong. And he said, okay, now shut up.
Right. But
he became very close friends with Cary Grant. And as I said, Bill didn't drive. And up on Sunset Boulevard, there was a bus stop in front of Schwab's drugstore, and Bill lived near there. And every morning, Bill would sit at the bus stop, and Cary Grant would pick him up in his convertible Rolls Royce and drive Bill down to the set where they were shooting. Well, on this one morning, as Bill tells the story, there were two beautiful girls waiting at the bus stop. And Bill sat down and said to the girls, hi, you waiting for the bus? Well, that's a stupid thing for somebody to say sitting at a bus stop. And they said, yes, aren't you? And he said, no, I'm waiting for Cary Grant to pick me up. And these two girls looked at him and said, looked like, are you out of your mind? Perfect timing. Up drives Cary Grant. Morning, Bill. Bill says, morning, Cary, and waves to the two girls. Those girls are still sitting there with their mouths all the way down to the floor.
Can I talk about Polanski?
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
You did 2 Polanski movies.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you actually read the Rosemary's Baby script.
No, the Rosemary's Baby galleys before.
Galleys. Okay, so people don't know what a galley is.
A galley is a publisher before the book is published sends out galleys usually to the author and maybe a few people for comments, or to, if it looks like it's going to be a movie, to a lit agent to sell it as a motion picture.
So you read it and you go, this is something.
It was. I was, you have to work hard and you have to get lucky sometimes. I think luck and hard work are they go together.
Right.
And you can work really hard and never get lucky, or you can do both. And I've gotten lucky many times in my life.
How was producing that movie? Because I could see, I know Sinatra was with Mia. Polanski, I really don't. I've heard different things. Could you just give me over?
Roman had made pictures in Europe. He made a great Polish movie called Knife in the Water. He had made a film called Cul-de-sac, and I'm not sure if Repulsion had been made before or after we made Rosemary's. But he was a young, very talented Polish director who had a real dark side because he had, during World War II, he had escaped. He's Jewish, and he had escaped the Nazis by hiding out and being in mud and underneath things, lost family. And he had gone to the Polish film school, and still to this day, I don't know any other directors who knew as much about filmmaking as Roman. And Bob Evans brought him over. Bill Castle, because I was working for William Castle, went and bought the rights to the script, to the book. And when Robert Evans found out that he had a deal at Paramount, Evans said, "I'm paying you to work at Paramount. We're making Rosemary's Baby." Bill Castle was the producer. Bill Castle, who had directed some B movies, wanted to direct the movie. And Bob Evans said in the contract, best efforts to direct.
Right. Well, best efforts, yeah.
But he didn't get his best efforts. And Evans brought in Polanski.
And the production, going back to the production of that.
Yes.
Anything that comes, was it a
experience or just? It was a very difficult production. Roman, and I learned a lot about Roman during the making of that. Roman was a guy who, if there was no pressure or stress, he worked as fast as he could and wanted to do everything great. If there was stress and pressure on him, he'd rebel and take a lot longer and say basically, screw you, you know? And we were going way longer than what was budgeted. But the dailies were great, but it was way longer. And Mia Farrow was supposed to do a Sinatra movie. They were married. And
he was getting angry.
He was very angry because he wanted Mia to leave the film and go do his film. And Mia eventually, cutting short, he basically threatened her, and she decided to stay with the movie. And I was there when Mickey Rudin, Frank's lawyer, handed Mia the divorce papers, which was very devastating.
Wait, and you turned around and gave it to her?
I didn't.
No, you were there when
I was there when Mickey Rudin handed.
Yeah, that would be
the divorce papers.
Yeah, well, an AD does a lot. I'm not sure that they have to do that as well.
If that's it.
Yeah, no.
And one other movie, and it's going to blow people's mind, but you also did Chinatown with Roman Polanski.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
Chinatown is like unbelievable as far as
it's a perfect film
of the
It's
world.
A perfect film.
Yeah.
One of my, favorite times of my life. But I learned because I was the assistant director and Bob Evans was the producer, who was also the studio head at the time. And I was going to go through the schedule, that thing that I talked to you about on Gorky Park. And I said to Bob, I'm going to give him 68 days to film it. And Bob said, "You think he needs 68 days? I said, "No, I think he needs around 60. But if I give him the extra time, Bob, you know Roman as well as I do, I think he'll feel good about it." And I'll never forget the day he came into Bob's office and I had the production board up and I said to Roman, "I'm going to take you through the schedule. You tell me where you think it's too much time or not enough time." And I said, "Well, I've given you 3 days for this." He said, "Howie, I don't need 2 days, plenty for this." I said, "Roman, take the 3 days. If we don't need it, we'll do it another way. I got 1 day for this." "Oh, Howie, I want the day and a half for that." "Okay." we had the schedule at 68 days.
This is because you knew from Rosemary's Babies, if he wasn't under the pressure,
Yes.
he was
So-
he would work fast.
So if you read Roman's book, you'll see him talking about, hey, on Chinatown, I came under schedule. He talks about that.
Huh.
And that was, sometimes with Redford's always late to the set. So there's a thing called the call sheet. You tell him what time you need him in makeup and what time you need him on the set. We had a separate call sheet for Redford on the way we were from everybody else, because if you told him 8 o'clock makeup, 9 o'clock on set, he'd show up 9:30 and then do makeup.
Did he ever wonder why
I love the story
he
with
got
Jack
these early
Nicholson.
calls?
Jack Nicholson doing Chinatown, and you were waiting for him to come on set.
Oh, well, yeah, that's a great story. As for some of you who may know, Jack Nicholson's a great LA Laker basketball fan. And we were shooting on stage 9, I think, the Department of Water and Power scene. And every Friday night, Polanski would have a party up at the house he was renting in Los Angeles. And in those days, you usually wrapped by 6:30 at night. It was on the day before, Jack said to me, hey, Bullhorn, the Laker game is on, from Boston tonight, starting at 4:30. You think you can get me a TV in my little dressing room on the stage? I said, oh, I've got a little black and white Sony with the rabbit ears. Remember those? Mm-hmm. And I said, I'll bring it in. He said, oh, that'd be great. So I brought it in, and at 4:30, as we're lighting whatever we're doing, Jack would watch the game, and then he'd come out and shoot whatever scene. So we're getting ready for the last scene of the day, a shot it's on Jack, and you focus to the pictures that he's starting to put together, John Huston and the Department of Water and Power. And we go on to the photograph and back to his face, and then on to another. So the focus puller has a lot of work to do to prepare. And now we're ready to shoot. It's about 6:20, 6:30. We're going to get the last shot, and we're going to all go up to Roman's house for Mexican food. And I say to my assistant director, a woman in those days named Michelle Adair. And I said to Michelle, we're ready, go get Jack. And Michelle came back a few minutes later and said, he won't come out. He's watching the game. And I said, oh, we're going to shoot, Well, go back and tell him we really got to go. And she came back a few minutes later and said, he won't come out. So I'll go get him. So I walk off the set to the stage where in the dressing room. And I said, Jack, come on, man. He said, no, wait a minute. There's only a few seconds left. And he closed the door on me. I said, Jack, come on. He said, no. Oh, Jesus. Jerry West just hit a shot. Overtime. So I said, Jack, you can't. We got to get this shot. We're on overtime.
Magic time is ending.
Yeah. So I go back to Roman, and I said, Roman, he's watching the Laker game. He doesn't want to come out. Come on. He says, come on, Howie. Let's get him out. I go back again. He won't do it. Finally, I go to Roman. Roman says, I'll get him out. So he knocks on the door, and by this time, Jack's locked the door, and he says, Jack, come on, Jack, we got to go. He said, I'll be out in a minute. Oh, Jesus. What happened? Double overtime. So Roman says, come on. I come in and watch with you. No, I know you, Roman. You're not. He said, Jack, I swear, come on, let me in. I watch, and then we go do the shot. You sure, Roman? Yeah. Come on. He unlocked the door. The TV was right inside the door. Roman took the TV and threw it across the stage floor, and it broke into a million pieces. Well, Jack was so pissed. He had those great suits that he wore, He took off the coat and he threw it at Roman. You Polish, I won't go through what he said.
Right.
Roman had a sweater on, took off his sweater, threw it at Jack and said, listen, you blah, 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 actor, blah, blah, blah. Jack took his shirt off, his shoes off, his pants off.
Unbelievable.
Roman, and they threw everything at each other and called both of them every name in the book,
Oh my God.
and they walked off the stage. Well, I called rap because
Yeah, really.
we weren't going to get that.
That's a
shot.
wrap, everybody.
That's a wrap.
And oh my God, I lost a television.
Right.
Yeah.
But more importantly, what are we going to do on Monday morning? These guys hate each other. So I don't know what to do. Should I go up to his house for the party or not? All right, so I go up there. And when I get up there, Jack and Roman are arm in arm. They're laughing. They're having a great time.
Do they have their clothes
Oh,
on?
you want a taco? You want a burrito? What the
Huh.
hell's going on? And I said to Roman, I said, what happened? He said, well, we both came out of Paramount and we were on Melrose and Gower at a red light. Neither one of us had any, both looked like we were naked. We looked at each other and we broke out laughing
Right. Wow.
at the silliness of it. And Monday
Thank
morning.
God, otherwise the movie never would
Wait,
have
wait,
gone on.
wait, you get the punchline. Saturday morning, 10 a.m., there's a knock on my door. And Roman's assistant is there with a brand new color
Oh, a
little
color.
Sony television set.
Oh, so it worked out. Total
Yeah.
happy ending.
Yeah.
Well,
Hey, I will say this. In today's world, you couldn't even, yes, we're going to wrap it up. In today's world, you couldn't do that because somebody on set would have a cell phone and would probably document that whole
Oh,
thing.
yeah, without a doubt.
And boy, that would go viral.
Yeah.
So let's move on. I just want to, the other movies, real quickly, I'll just throw them
Yeah,
out. If you have a story to tell it. Marathon, you did Marathon. I just want people to know all of the movies that you have done. Marathon Man, unbelievable. You and you have stories in the book about that. You did Heaven Can Wait. You did Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Well,
Yeah.
I didn't do it. I was head of the company that did it.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
But you did Wayne's World.
I did Wayne's World. Yes.
Yes. How
And
was
Wayne's
that?
World
That was
2.
that turned out to be big.
That's luck.
Yeah.
I was doing a movie and the heads of Paramount called me and said, would I fly into, I was doing a movie in Texas, would I fly into LA and meet with Lorne Michaels? Because Lorne had basically, done television and he wasn't really a movie producer at the time. And they wanted somebody like me. And I met with Lorne and he was one of the greatest things ever. He gave me the job of working with him on Wayne's World.
Well, didn't your kids also? They were the ones that said, "Hey, you should do this movie."
Who else?
Your
My kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I called my kids and said, "Hey, they want me to do Wayne's World." Oh, Dad, you got to do Wayne's.
Yeah.
You got to do Wayne's World. And
Before
so,
I'm going to ask, before we wrap up, I just want to ask this. So the story that you tell about finding Edward Norton for Primal Fear?
Yeah.
And he came in, and so you guys really thought he had a stutter and he was just a kid from West Virginia?
Yeah. Edward's a very good actor, and when this great casting director, Deb Aquila, had met him, and our director, Greg Hoblet, met him in New York, and we brought him out to test. But he had, all the way through all of it, he was just a sweet kid who was a pretty good actor from West Virginia. And when he came in to do,
So you thought he was a real stutterer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And when he came in to do the test, as he tells the story, he didn't know who he was going to do the test with. And he saw some guy with long hair coming into the set. And when he turned around and got in the set, it was Richard Gere. He said, "Oh my God, I'm testing with Richard Gere." He'd never done anything. But he did a couple of the scenes, which were good. And then he did the scene, for those of you who may have seen Primal Fear, where he changes on camera from Aaron, the sweet kid, to Roy, the split personality, or what we think is the split personality. And when he did that, I'll never forget, Gere turned around afterwards and looked at me and Greg and Gary Lucchese and went, and we all had just seen what we saw, and we knew we had a great kid. And it turned out he wasn't from a hick from West Virginia. He was a patrician kid from Columbia, Maryland. And his grandfather was, Charles Rouse, who created the term mall, MALL.
That's right. And he says nice things about you, Ed Norton, because he even writes maybe the forward in your book, or at least a testimonial.
Yes.
Review. Yeah,
Yes.
he's a big fan of yours.
Yeah. Well, we're good buddies. Good buddies.
Do you want to, just to wrap up, the new reality, surviving movie theaters, tier pricing,
You got to do everything you can.
everything you can. Yeah.
Everything you can. Go to the movies, folks.
Yeah.
Don't watch a comedy at home.
Yeah.
Don't watch a horror film at home. Don't watch an action movie at home. You want to don't watch a drama where all of you, a community together watching that.
Yeah.
Preaching to the
Don't
choir,
watch a
my friend.
thriller at home. You want to scream by yourself? Scream with 200 other people.
But see, as long as there's dating, you could always take a girl to the movies. You want to go to the movies with me.
Yeah.
That hopefully.
Or with your buddies or with your girlfriend.
Yeah.
And put the popcorn in your lap. We know your
Yeah.
old trick,
There you
Kenny,
go.
on a date.
I'm gonna
Hey,
go eat popcorn right
Bullhorn, it's a wrap. We need to respect your time and look, I just want everyone to go out and get the book, Magic Time. My Life in Hollywood. It's extraordinary. It isn't just these stories, of which we've only touched on a few. Again, it's the arc of your life and the spiritual journey that you went on. I love that you say that it's about hard work and luck, but you show how to do the hard work. You're
Thanks, guys. I
living.
really enjoyed it, and I hope your group likes it too.
Hawk, take care.
Nice
Thank
to
you
meet both.
again.
Honor to meet you, sir.
That was-
Thank you
that
for
was-
giving us your time.
That was
That was
Let
awesome.
Mark
fascinating.
Gordon know that I was okay.
Yeah. You were fascinating. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you for watching and or listening to the Gary and Kenny Show. We're on all the popular podcast platforms. We have our own YouTube channel, The Gary and Kenny Show. We'd love it if you'd subscribe. We're also on streaming television, DBNA TV. That's all from me. Kenny, how about you?
I think that's all from me. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Bye-bye.